So first and foremost, I would become clear, Paul, on what you're hoping to achieve with these. Are these a training supplement or are these a training replacement? I mean, are you using these in addition to your workouts or are these your workouts? Because if they are your workouts, I'd recommend your earlier suggestion to incorporate some intensity. And if they're simply supplementary, then I would definitely tone down the intensity, and I'd also consider when I schedule them. I mean, you can do for instance, if these are just supplementary and you're simply looking to pad your mileage or get a little more training benefit, then you can do your hard workouts perhaps in the evening and then do these rides in a fasted state, get your fasted ride in, eat your breakfast at work. You could do, if you were to turn them into a workout, so there's just so many different ways to go here.
Yep.
If you wanted to turn them into a workout, and that was going to be your workout for the day, then you could postpone it to the afternoon so that you could time your nutrient intake or your lunch such that you had a good 3-hour gap and you were ready to rip it on the way home. And then by the time you got home, you could follow your training immediately with the appropriate meal.
Yep. And chances are you're going to get a better... if you can adequately fuel, if this is going to be a situation where your commutes or when you have to train, I feel like that's a good solution. Is maybe you eat your lunch slightly later than noon. If you leave work at 5, you eat sometime around 2, sometime around 3 if you're able to, and then by that time,
or eat at the regular time and then just have a snack a couple hours out. There's a lot of ways to address the nutrient timing, but the fact is you'll be loaded up and ready to roll.
I think a lot of people are starting to commute more right now, just because, at least in the northern hemisphere, because weather change, everything else, it's starting to become more spring-like. There's more light. I think next week we have the time change as well. I think so. So that'll change things around too. Plenty of people doing this. We usually, when we talk about commuting, we say, try to look at your life in the sense that you have X amount of hours that you can spend on a bicycle. And if you can spend more of those times doing high quality, or more of those hours doing high quality, then chances are you're going to get more benefit from it. But at the same time, there are other benefits to commuting. There's the environmental benefit, of course. There's the other side of things, the psychological benefit, because driving in a car can sometimes be a little bit hectic, whereas if you're just riding on your bike, perhaps on different roads, it can be helpful. But then there's also just the fact that, it's once again, you might be padding the training that you're already doing. So there's plenty of reasons to do it. So in this case, we're not talking about whether you should commute or not. We're just assuming that you are, and really how to make the most of it. And one thing that I see with people is that it's really hard to just go easy on a commute. It's really hard to do that for people. And I see a lot of people say that they ride a fixed gear bike, and they ride the fixed gear bike to force them to not go too hard. But I think that's a little backwards, because if you have any sort of hills, then you are going to be pressing hard.
No recovery on a fixed gear bike.
Yeah, and you're always spinning. I think, honestly, ride something like a mountain bike with lower gearing and that sort of stuff. Then you're really limited, because then you aren't going to be pushing too hard, right? You won't be pushing for KOMs down crazy streets, anything like that.
I would just be careful that if this does supplement your training, not to get too carried away with it. I mean, there's nothing to say you can't get away with taking an easy ride and sprinkling it with 4, 5, 6-second sprints sort of thing. That probably wouldn't detract from the quality of your other workouts, probably wouldn't overload your system to the point of overtraining or anything close to it. But don't fall into the rut of, just because I'm on my bike, I have to go hard.
Which is easy for us to do.
It is. It's way more fun.
I've heard none of that, because that is a lot of people just go la 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 when they hear this stuff. Okay, let's now imagine, we don't know, but let's say this is all of this person's training, all of Paul's training, and 8 miles isn't a long time, right? Like especially if he's going 20 miles per hour. Could Paul do intervals both in the morning and in the evening?
Yeah, absolutely. So just double up.
Yeah,
and that second workout would come at a somewhat of a depleted state. I mean, there would be, I would bet, a bit of additional cell signaling that would benefit that second ride to actually make it worthwhile, even if you're carrying some fatigue into it.
Here's how I would structure it. I would do just like our Saturday, Sundays, and on Tuesday, Thursdays. I would have the more intense, shorter intervals in the morning, because I feel like those, at least for me, I know they take less glycogen. They are, compared to a sweet spot workout. So do that kind of high stuff. To me, it's a much easier in the morning to do 30-second on-offs than to do a 20-minute sweet spot interval.
Yep.
And then in the evening, after that big meal, or after lunch and stuff, you could do your maybe sweet spot intervals, threshold intervals, and then immediately replenish when you get home. And that could be a good, Chad?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to tackle it. I mean, some high intensity and then some moderate intensity, and then nutrition on both ends of it, properly timed.
Yeah.
You could also, another thing that you could do is if you have, like you said, Paul, that you have your straight route. I have, if I was to commute into work, I have a straight route that's darn near flat, like the whole way in. But there's also a route that I can take that's much more hilly coming back. And if you are just going to be having commuting and using that sort of thing, I'd recommend having, if possible, if you can have a few different routes that you can use. Because a lot of the time, if you're doing city streets, don't do intervals. It's just way too dangerous, right?
The danger components,
if you have suburban streets, suburban or rural streets that you're working with, then you can really change things around. Like, for example, if I'm on that flat, I have one route that I could take that has a super long bike path with zero interruptions and it's really safe. And on that one, it'd be great to schedule in some more steady work. But then there's another one that I have that has long climbs and then another one that has really punchy climbs that I could take. Like, I can vary the route. So think of that if you have trouble scheduling in any sort of intervals because of stoplights or anything else in one spot, look at another place where maybe you can change the route and it can kind of inspire your ride or kind of guide your ride to be what it needs to be.